First question. Mr. A can earn a return of 16% by investing in equity share on his own. Now, he is considering a recently announced equity based mutual fund scheme in which initial expenses are 5.5% and annual recurring expenses are 1.5%. How much should the mutual fund earn to provide Mr. A a return of 16%? Okay, so this is Mr. A and he's already investing in equity shares and generating a 16% return. Now he is considering investing in a equity mutual fund scheme. Okay, and the initial expenses are 5.5% and recurring expense are 1.5%. Now we need to find out how much should this mutual fund generate required MF return to ensure that after deducting for initial expense and recurring expense, the investor is left with the 16% return. Okay. So required MF return, this is what we need to find out. Now, what is happening? He is already investing in equity shares, right? Suppose he invests rupees 100 in equity shares. He is generating 16%. That means he generates 16 rupees, right? So the target is to generate 16 rupees. Okay. And suppose he is investing in this equity oriented mutual fund scheme, then there is something called initial expense of 5.5%. That means whenever you invest some amount, 5.5% of it is charged towards initial expense. That means you're left with 100. Suppose you're investing 100, then you're left with 100 minus 5.5% of 100. That is 100 minus 5.5% of 100 is 5.5. That is 100 minus 5.5 is rupees 94.5. So you are left with 94.5. So the mutual fund can only utilize 94.5 towards investment and it is required to generate 16 rupees as return. That means the required MF return should be rupees 16 by rupees 94.5. That means its target is to generate rupees 16 out of rupees 94.5. Okay, so far we are good, but there's a catch. There is also an additional information given that the recurring expense is 1.5%. Okay, so what is this recurring expense? So the fund every year it keeps generating returns and it also charges something called recurring expenses to, towards fund management expenses, right? So suppose you are investing 100 and the fund has delivered a gross return of 14%, that is rupees 14, right? So out of this, it is telling that 2% is towards recurring expense. That means 2% of 100, that is rupees 2 is towards recurring expense. So this is investment gross return. This is towards recurring expense. So in this case, the what will be the value after deducting recurring expense? That means you will deduct rupees 2 from rupees 14. That means the net return will be rupees 12. Okay. So every year, the fund will keep deducting this recurring expense out of the return so generated. So even in this case, there is a recurring expense of 1.5%. So whatever return the fund is generating, it will deduct 1.5% from it. And only the net return is passed on to the investor, right? So if 1.5% is being deducted every time, in order to ensure that this particular thing equals what is already generating, what we need to do? We need to add the recurring expense to this required return, so arrived it, right? So we will add 1.5% to rupees 16 by 94.5, and this is the required MF return. Upon calculation, we get 16 by 94.5 plus 1.5%, 0.015. That is 18.43%. Right. Now, this is the answer. So now we have to write it in proper steps. Okay. So what is this? This is the targeted return, right? So what we'll do, we'll just write it in the next page. This equation, rupees 16 by rupees 94.5 plus 1.5%. So what is this? This is recurring expense percent, right? And this equation, what can we do? See, if it is 100, then it is 16 by 94.5. But otherwise, what can we do? It is 16% of x, right? 16% of 100 is rupees 16. So it is 16% of x. And this is 94.5% of x, right? Plus 1.5%. And if you see this, it is 16% of x by 100 minus 5.5%, right? 100% minus 5.5% of x plus 1.5%, right? Right? 100% minus 5.5 is 94.5. Okay. So this gives rise to 16% by 100% is nothing but 1 minus 5.5%. And this x and x will cancel it anyway. Okay. Plus 1.5%, right? So this is the recurring expense, and this is the initial expense, and this is what he is already generating, right? So the formula is the percentage that is already generating by 1 minus initial expenses plus recurring expense. Required MF return is equals to personal earnings by 1 minus initial expenses, that is in percent, plus recurring expenses. This is also in percentage terms. So this is the formula we are supposed to use, right? Now we will solve the problem in. So first question, personal earnings of Mr. A is 16%. Required mutual funds earnings is equals to personal earnings divided by 1 minus initial expenses. This is in percentage plus recurring expense. This is also in percentage. So when we put the numbers, we get 16% by 1 minus 5.5% plus 1.5%. That is equals to that's equal to 18.43%, right? Therefore, required mutual fund return is 18.43%, right? So this is how you put it on paper. Okay.